empty the chamber on them. And how do you do that? First 6 seconds, point A to point B, everything you got. Everything you got. Turn that shit up. Let's go.
Welcome to Scoop World Order. Let's go kill some Seawolves edition. We are going to be playing Arkansas State this weekend. This is almost a certain win. I can't imagine that the spread is much lower than about 7 touchdowns. I think we're going to get out of this thing pretty quick in terms of the starters. So it's going to be real interesting to see who gets in terms of backups, how they play. And there's some other storylines, like the Lathan Ransom, Josh Proctor deal. Who's going to, obviously, I imagine Lathan's going to be the new starter. How much does Josh Proctor get sprinkled in at strong safety? A lot of things to look at, a lot of stuff. Do we see Dallin Hayden? Do we see some of these young gunners? Do they get some young receivers ready to go? Because, our health at wide receiver all of a sudden is, I'd be stunned if we saw Jackson Smith and Jigba. Sure we won't. I'm sure, Julian Fleming, Cam Babb, if they were banged up for Notre Dame, why would you play him against Arkansas State? I think we might be seeing some young guys get some runs. With the new redshirting rule, which was changed a few years ago because teams were circumventing it, you can play in up to 4 games and still redshirt, which was a radical change. When I played, if you played a single play, it would cost you your red shirt. So they changed that because a lot of teams were taking advantage of a loophole with medical red shirts, where if you request a medical and you only play in the first 4 games, you generally get it 100% of the time. So teams like Ohio State and Alabama figured that out. They started playing guys, and then they'd hold them after game 4 and they'd redshirt. So we're going to talk about all that. We're going to watch a little bit of Notre Dame film and get it cranked up for Saturday, baby. So with that being said, as always, we are thankful and grateful for you guys. We're growing like crazy on YouTube. We appreciate you. Leave us a like on this. Comment. Give that young guy you want to see stand out. Who will be the young guy that stands out? Who will be talking about Saturday afternoon after the game is over? Is it going to be CJ Hicks? Is it going to be Sonny Styles? Is it going to be Dallin Hayden? It's going to be somebody else. Kyle McCord? Is it Devin Brown? There's a lot of different guys out there who are going to be getting their first real action in the horseshoe. It's going to be exciting to see what they do. But thank you for all your support. And as always, I have my good friend Nevada. Nevada, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Exciting week. Got Arkansas State coming up, which is going to be a nice opponent at this time of the year. Going to see a lot of young players and had a real chance to go back over the Notre Dame tape and figure out what went right, what went wrong, and where the game turned. And I think the Notre Dame game was the perfect dose for this Ohio State team. They needed a challenge like that early in the season. They got it. They responded. They won. They won by 2 scores. And we came out of it without major injuries. So well positioned into week 2 of the college football season.
Yeah, and Nevada, it's a totally different buzz. Obviously, this week we're playing a lesser opponent. Do you believe you've begun at the forefront of the expansion news with the Big Ten and even the SEC. Do you believe that in the future these games will go away as the Big Ten expands? Will the Arkansas States be removed from the schedule and replaced with a USC, a UCLA, a Colorado, a Washington, a Stanford? Is that how we're going to be scheduling from now on?
Yeah, well, I think you're going to see less and less of these games in the future, and I think that's by design. The idea is to kind of go after an NFL model. You think with the NFL model, you don't have bye weeks in season. It's like they're real games, and they all count, and they all matter. And the way that you can guarantee that you have these premier matchups week in and week out, because let's face it, what drives the matchups in college football are the premier teams and the big teams and the big showdowns, and that's what drives the ratings. And you look at the ratings this week for the Ohio State game, 10.6 million people watched the game, second biggest opener of all time in college football history. That's because it's Ohio State. Ohio State is a media monster, and they just gobble up those eyeballs. And, if you want to get those big games, you got to put them in conference, because the other ones, the out-of-conference games, take too long to set up. By the time you set them up, you're not even sure if they're big anymore. You look back on games we set up against Miami and other ones that when we set them up, they were big. And then by the time we played them, they were a shell of themselves. This way you're getting conference opponents that are going to be USC, UCLA, Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa, Penn State. I mean, it's week after week of premier matchups for the Big Ten and for Ohio State. And I think you're going to see more of that in the future. And from that standpoint, we're all going to be better off.
Yeah, I totally agree. We've played like Cal Berkeley in the past few years, and I think we scheduled them when they saw Aaron Rodgers and Deshaun Jackson, Marshawn Lynch, Javid Best. They had some outstanding players. And by the time we got around to playing them in 2012, they still had Keenan Allen, but they weren't nearly as good. Jared Goff actually got there the next year. My senior year, we played Washington, out at Washington, and we thought that would be a formidable foe, and they were terrible. You know, they ended up, I think, firing Ty Willingham after that season. It wasn't much of an opponent. But yeah, that's the hard part about a lot of these games that get scheduled. They're 10 years out, 12, 15 years out. And, I mean, we scheduled Bama, they're coming in a few years. And I mean, if Nick Saban's still on, he might still be going to send a big extension. But, you just never know what the state of the programs are going to be in 5, 10 years because, we've seen the cyclical fashion of college football and how teams go up and down. And, you could get the Alabama of 2006 that wasn't very good, and they fired their coach, and they went and got Nick Saban. So you never know what you're going to get into. That being said, we're going to head into the film studio for a little bit, and I got the third quarter queued up. So this was we got the ball. Not exactly the ideal start. Nevada, what were your emotions? We're down 10-7 at halftime. What were you thinking? The mentality of the team was, and what do you think we need to get better at?
Well, I thought, at halftime, I'm sitting there, we're looking at the stat sheet and seeing Trey Henderson with 5 carries. And I'm thinking, Dave's going to come out and just pound them and establish the run, get some things going. We're going to get a nice long drive, go reestablish ourselves, get up in this game and pull this thing away. And instead, I'm pretty sure, if my memory serves, I think we went 3 passes and out. So
Yeah.
it was kind of an inauspicious start to the second half. But it really just kind of speaks to the lack of balance that we had in our offense. Up till 4 minutes to go in the third quarter, we were about 2/3 pass, 1/3 run. I think we were almost exactly like 20 passes, 10 rushes, or something like that, up to 4 minutes to go in the third quarter. And from the 4 minutes to go in the third quarter on to the end of the game, it was exactly the opposite of that. We went 20 rushes and 10 passes. And in that time, we had 2 touchdown drives, put the game away in terms of doing it. So I think it's while the ending stat sheet looks pretty similar in terms of rushes to passes, it was pretty heavily weighted passing for almost 3/4 of the game. And I think that's something that has to be addressed and something that Dave will learn from and be smarter about.
Yeah, and here no separation from the receiver, kind of a low, duckish kind of throw from CJ. The pocket's perfect, great protection by the guys. But yeah, this was not an ideal start. Marvin Harrison Jr. was our top option at the time with Jackson Smith and Jigba being out, and Notre Dame held firm. I mean, this first drive, it could have, I'm sure that Ohio State was pretty animated in the locker room and, hey, we got to go out and get a score, take the lead. And Notre Dame stuffed us this first drive. So it was a good job by them, and it's just an interesting by us to not run the ball a single time here. Here we go. I mean, it's kind of a run. It's kind of like a toss sweep out to Mecca. Good play. But yeah, this was you got third medium here. Nevada, what is your ideal call on a third and medium if you're the coordinator?
Well, I mean, for me, it really depends on what the defense is giving you. In a situation when you line up here and you see what Notre Dame's, presenting, I like the pass out to the back in the flat. I think that's always that's good for a lot. I like to operate in the middle of the field if you can. I think for Ohio State, third medium can be a running down. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it doesn't have to be necessarily a passing down all the time. I think they've got the guys that can make that happen. You can run the draw, you can run the counter. There's lots of things that you can do to do other than what they did, which was go 3 and out, because that was a really bad time to be going 3 and out in the ball game. It just was just not a good possession for the Buckeyes.
This was tremendous by our boy DeWan. DeWan, he's going against Isaiah Foskey, their first round pick, and who I thought was really good. And DeWan here gets his inside hand on his shoulder pad, kind of jerks him to the ground. Just a beautiful rep by DeWan. I mean, really, really good pass protection there. And again, you don't see the separation that we're used to when we had Garrett Wilson and Olave, corners right on him, draped all over him. The ball is just kind of just like diving. I mean, it's like that's a clear lane, and it's just like it's not a laser beam by any stretch. It's just kind of like a big arcing, duck. I mean, you think if you're going to gun that thing in there, it's going to be on a rope, but not a great start for the Bucks here. So we have to punt, and then we get to watch this defense again. Nevada, The defense really was fantastic. You could kind of tell the offense was feeding off of them. What was your thought at this point in the game? We go 3-and-out. We don't really do anything. How important is this drive to Ohio State and to the defense to come out and get the stop here?
Yeah, clearly a big drive. I think, though, that Notre Dame kind of demonstrated pretty quickly that they just weren't going to be able to threaten us. And it was going to take something weird for them to be able to put together drives for a score. They had that one completion to Styles in the first play of the game for 54 yards. That was his only completion of the game. Other than that, they really just didn't do much. And so I felt like if we could avoid the personal fouls, avoid just some sort of a major snafu on defense, that that they weren't going to be able to threaten, they weren't going to be able to sustain drives. And when you have an offense like that for Notre Dame that's getting shut down, being taken off the field quickly, it just puts so much pressure on them, because that Ohio State offense keeps rolling out there and keeps getting more chances. That they're going to get theirs. So I felt like if we could just kind of hang in there, not get behind by 2 scores, that this was certainly a game that we were going to win. And I thought we'd win probably a little bit more comfortably. I was looking at, probably at this point, I'm thinking that we're going to win by about 18. Ended up winning by 11. So it's a nice win, nice thing, but definitely was a key stop and some big plays by the defense, specifically linebackers on this drive.
Yeah, that's a great play by Steele here. Kind of a delayed blitz. Picks the hole. Again, when there's when the center makes, when he directs where he's going, if he's doing a 3-man slide this way and, the nose crosses face, I mean, he's open. Because, this guard, if he knows he's working this way, and, this is basically a 4-man protection, or 4-man slide. So he's got the C gap, he's got the B gap, he's got the A gap, he's got the other A gap, and he's got the big block one-on-one here. So, when he crosses face, the guard goes with him, and Steele recognizes it. I think that he's wrong here. I think that, he's manned up and he thinks that he's staying in protection, and he kind of pivots and goes out on a route. So, Steele adds, and obviously, the quarterback doesn't see this guy is probably wide open, but, because this is, everyone's, they're cover 1 here, man, across the board. But, the pressure causes an overthrow. Obviously when you see Steel Chambers running at you full bore and you're going to take that shot, it's a lot harder to throw the rock. But again, it's good design. It's a good play by Steele. Again, I think that was right after Jaden Ballard had a 15-yard personal foul. Ryan Day was pretty animated about how upset he was with Jaden for taking that. So it was very interesting. But as we continue to watch this, Nevada, 2nd and 10, Steele gets a nice hit on the quarterback, which I'm always a big fan of. What are you thinking as we progress? I thought Steele played outstanding. I thought obviously Tommy was the National Defensive Player of the Week, but give me your thoughts on our linebacker play, the upgrade with Jim Knowles running the show and his Oklahoma State guys. Through one game, it was pretty positive. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I thought what was notable was, like, we knew Steele and Tommy were going to be getting it. It was funny. We had talked about that a lot through the fall, and we talked about the depth chart. We talked about guys just not pushing Tommy and Steele, and how those guys were pretty locked in for the 2 linebackers in that 4-2-5 linebacker configuration that Knowles likes so much. And people were asking, was that just a result of the other guys not being good or not being? And it was like, no, it just they distanced themselves from everybody else and playing at a really, really high level. But I thought with this team, and on Saturday night, I thought when everybody came in, I thought they played well at linebacker. You could just tell that they knew where they were supposed to go. They were well coached. They've got a coherent defensive scheme, and these guys know where to go. It's not, it just feels different, and it's amazing that when you watch a defense that's working in harmony together, that you just see less breakdowns, less physical breakdowns, less mental breakdowns, less guys, looping and letting guys run free. And I thought the entire linebacker corps played well. Gave them an A+ for the game for sure.
Yeah, and this is something I can't stand this. I'm just going to say this when you make things harder than they need to be on your offensive line teammates. So the right tackle here, there's a 0 nose. So they're running a little play action pass where the center is going to pull out and kick JT Tumala, which is an incredibly difficult block. He literally has to snap the ball, turn, hope that this guy who's coming, 1,000 miles an hour off the edge when this guy down blocks, he can get there. So what I again, like you see how difficult this is. This is almost an impossible block. What I would do if I was coaching this, when there's a nose and there's literally no threat of someone coming in the B gap, which he's responsible for, I would literally post, which is, you kind of take a left, then a right post step, put your arm out here and kind of hold this guy for a split second. That makes it so much easier. And this is a pet peeve of mine when I watch offensive line play, that this guy, the right tackle he stands up high for one. So there's literally zero run cell because he's so tall. And he just lets JT just free run at the quarterback. And this is such a tough block. And you got the back coming back over to help, but even still, he's the back kind of split. The back saves the day right here because the center can't even get a finger on him, and but it's just not easy. And it is the quarterback's disrupted. He's getting moved off his spot, and it doesn't have to be that hard. Yeah, so you got our two ends. Because Jack comes from the other side, gets held right here, comes off, deflects that pass. And again, you see why these two are our best defensive ends because they were this disruptive the whole night. Sometimes the stats don't tell the tale because you don't, if he doesn't have the sacks that Mike Hall has, but they're running twists where Jack's basically giving himself up so that Mike can make the play. Like sometimes, there's not like an assist stat for sacks and that kind of action. And it's really interesting seeing how these guys work together because they really do a good job. So this is 3rd and 10, a lot of pressure. They're showing a zero look right here where they've got a cover zero look. Cover zero, when you hear someone say cover zero, that means literally every single person is man to man. So I imagine there's 2 receivers out here. He's got him man, and this is a zero look, so it means that you're bringing 6. So if this back's staying in, you're probably going to turn the protection. So these guys, the linemen all take here. You leave him and him. Some teams like to fan it and have the end and guard block the big guys, so that way you're not putting a back on Jack Sawyer, which is generally a losing matchup. But the hard part is, here, he steps in the A gap, and this is like I said, when you want to fan it and have the big guys take the big guys, and then you have him versus a linebacker. This is tough because unless this guy is really a monster, he's going to run into Steele or Tommy in the A gap, and he's going to get. He does this is a fantastic job by number 7. He's a big back. He was the guy that was the fullback he scored that 1-yard touchdown. Their only touchdown of the night was by him. He's a big dude. Because this is that's a clinic tape right here, what he's doing to Steele. But generally, most backs aren't going to win this matchup. They're going to get you're going to get pushed. And the thing you can't do is you can't cut block. A lot of times backs like to cut block in pass protection just because it's something where a little guy can take down a big guy. But the problem is if you cut Steele here and he goes flying, that's a good way to get your guy's ACL torn. So, we've seen that in football before, and that's why you generally don't cut there. But this is actually really good protection by the back. They're a little soft in the middle, 75 soft, 52 soft, but the rest of it, it's pretty good. So, and again, this is tough, man. I feel bad for Lathan on this one. Nevada, me and you are the kings of, hey, go scramble. This obviously isn't a call to run, but, you go get that scramble. And obviously, the 15 that Lathan gets here is questionable at best, but that they're going to probably throw that if it's close. And, but talk a little bit about, this play, because this is a huge play. They convert, or they're close to converting, and then they add 15 to it. What were your thoughts at this point?
Well, there's a couple things on that. One, you were talking about the potential for the running back to do a cut block. What I'd point out is, because Steele was semi-engaged with that other lineman, I think that would have been a penalty for a chop block, because I think that guy had his hand on him when he did that. So if he'd have dropped low, that might have been 15 on Notre Dame. As for the roughing, I hate the roughing call. I think that when you go out and you're a quarterback and you're running and you're doing that little shimmy shake, and then all of a sudden you drop in the side at the last second, that you should just get what you get. That was not an egregious hit. That was not what the hit was that was put in mind. It was just it was unfortunate, and that stuff should never be reviewed in slow motion because it always looks worse in slow motion than it is. It should be always reviewed in real time, and the guys should look at it in real time and say, in real time, does that meet the standard of egregious hit, or was that just a football play? And I would say if it was the other way too. If Braxton Miller had gone out and did a little shimmy and the last second dropped down, the guy hit him, I'd be saying it was a bad call. I thought it was a bad call, and I hate that part of it. I understand whether they're trying to protect runners. I understand whether they're trying to protect quarterbacks. They're trying to take headshots out of them, but that met none of the criteria. And that was a big play because that guy was within 1 or 2 yards of the line to make. So I think it was almost an impossible shot for Latham to be in.
Yeah, and here's another replay of it. And again, like it reminds me of the Cody Pickett play last year where they, he fakes a slide and then he keeps running and again when you're a defender, man, it's impossible because you're trying to tackle the guy and then he gives himself up or he starts to do it like you said, a little move, a little shimmy or whatever, and the defenders they can never win anymore. They're always called for targeting or late hits or whatever. And that wasn't an egregious nasty hit. That was a Latham let up big time here. Mike Hall again. This is a blown assignment by the offensive line. I mean, because obviously you're not going to just let Mike Hall run free. Like, why does he have to do a move here? But I don't. He gets him in the grasp. Kind of wrecks the whole play. But this is just a blown assignment by. I mean, the center's working this way, so I mean they're one up here and here, and it's just a total blow by the right guard, And again, we were, and again, I'm not saying that their two-time captain would have made that big of a difference, but they had some young guys in there, and we were able to take huge advantage of it because they hadn't seen anything like Mike Hall in their practices because Mike's a dynamic dude, and he's even more dynamic when they don't block him. Nevada, again, we're down to third down. Oh, that's amazing. Mike's actually coming off the field on third down, 3rd and 11. That's crazy. Giving a little blow. We got our, I believe we're nickel here. I think we played like one snap a dime. We actually had 6 DBs in. Nickel, here's the 3 down look, 2 linebacker look. Yeah, I believe this is the dime snap, actually. Yeah, because we have 2 linebackers and 3 D linemen, and this is dime, so... good defense, good coverage. Denzel Burke's looking to see if there's a penalty, praying that there's not a penalty. So, yeah, this is a good stop by our defense, man. I mean, so we kind of put them in a hole with that 15-yarder, and they're almost to the 50-yard line when they got the ball, and our defense held them. Your thoughts at this point in the game, Nevada? Offense about to get the ball back. It's time to do some work. But what were you thinking about this point in the game?
Well, I just thank goodness that Notre Dame was missing their center. That number 52 really had a tough game. If you look at kind of the core, a lot of the problems on the Notre Dame offensive line for the game, it all pretty much came back to, not all of it, but a lot of it came back to 52. 52's inability to sustain blocks, 52's inability to go to the right spot. And that's a tough spot for a guy to come into and play that position and on the big lights in front of everybody up against somebody like Michael Hall. But he had a tough game. He'll be better next week, but he wasn't good on Saturday night.
Here's the defense. So one of their big plans was to run a lot of bear defense. Now bear defense, again, it's a 0 nose who's head up on the center and 2-3 techniques, which is the outside shoulder of both guards. This is what Virginia Tech did famously in 2014. It's basically kind of like a goal line defense. People say it's like a diamond goal line defense. And I mean, this is strictly to stop the run. I mean, usually you have pretty terrible angles, but if Donnie gets, this is a very, very hard block for Donnie to get up to. I mean, this is almost, you'd want to almost push the center through just because, but it's hard again with a 0. It's hard to get him up to here. That's the hard block on this. When everyone else is manned up on the front side, like you're kind of a guy short and Donnie tries to get there. But, if by some miracle Donnie can get up there, this might be, 30-yard gain. I mean, you're to the safeties literally, but this is a really hard block for 74. And I think something that might be even more helpful is if he was a little bit lower and he pushes this guy on his hip. If you push the guy on the hip when they're kind of at this apex, the guy usually goes flying and you'd have like a little bit of a flatter course to get to this linebacker. Because again, if you look at it, the blocking's perfect. We block everybody that we can. And we just have a really hard angle for the one guy, which again, this is why bear defense is tough, is because it ruins a lot of your good angles that you get. But again, mine runs hard, get a handful of yards and it's a gainer. It's fine. I mean, that's just part of football. And, not every play is going to go for 20 yards. I mean, you're going to get some 3 and 4 yard gains. And, that was a 4-yard gain on first down. So pretty much every coach in the country would take that. So 2nd and 6, 2nd and manageable. It's a good place to be. Nevada, who, Who were some of the guys that you really liked on offense during this game? You know, we weren't as proficient as we've been, but I thought we had some guys that had some really nice efforts in the game. Who were some of your MVPs of the game?
Well, I think some of the unsung ones was like a guy like Cade Stover. I thought Cade Stover, he caught 3 balls, which for a tight end at Ohio State is that's like 50 anywhere else, and blocked really well, played really set an aggressive tone for the game for Ohio State, and I thought that was really a key component. I love Ohio State's tight ends, love them. I think that they provide so much flexibility for the passing game, for the running game. I love it when they have the 2 tight end sets in. As a fan, when you're watching, watch those 2 tight end sets because they move those guys around to try to get numerical advantage on what side of the field Ohio State wants, and they seem to get it whenever they want it. And that's why last year when I was talking about a guy like Mitch Rossi, who frankly not many people had heard about, just like he's a guy he can catch the ball opportunistically, but his run blocking is just tremendous. And when they shift those 2 tight ends over to one side, and then they run over that side, they've got a 4-3 advantage or a 5-4 advantage on that side of the field. That it almost always seems to result in a positive play for Ohio State. And so for me, it was the unsung heroes were the tight ends all night long.
Yeah, Luke gets lucky on this one right here. You can see the hand. Like usually when you see a guy reaching like this, and he's kind of show the ref that he's getting held. But I mean, this is a point where I would tell guys in film, like if Jim Bowman was grading the film, he literally would have given me a holding call on this, just because of. You can see the jersey right there getting stretched. You can see the kid reaching out. It's right in the view of the officials, so we kind of get away with it right there, which is nice. But it's real interesting when you get away with one like that, especially when it's right at the front of the play. I mean, usually that one never. It's hard to get away with that one, but Luke gets away with one here. Mine almost bust this one, which I'm glad Luke got away with it. I'm glad mine didn't bust, because if mine would have busted this and you got that holding call, you'd have felt about the smallest guy in Ohio Stadium at that point. But yeah, your guy Mayan really, he was really pouring it out, man. He really did a fantastic job. And what were your thoughts on Mayan? How would you split the carries between Mayan and Trey going forward in the bigger games, not the Arkansas State game, like in the bigger games going forward?
Well, I'm big on both guys. I just think they both give different things. I just think you've got to find more creative ways to get them touches. It can't just all be on the ground. You've got to get them activated in the short passing game. Because for a player like Trey Henderson, I'm saying he's got to get 24 to 30 touches a game, and but again, Mayan's a very, very capable back, and probably will end up on an NFL roster somewhere playing. So I'd like to see him get 15 to 20 touches a game as well. So that's in a 70 play game, you're getting a lot more. That's pretty heavily weighted towards the running back. So you've got to get that up to 80, 90 plays and see what you've got into that and try to maintain a little bit more balance. But, Mayan certainly earned every carry. I'm sure he'll see a lot going forward because he runs hard. He runs hard, and knock on wood, both of them are very conscious of ball security. Both of them are very willing blockers. So I think they both give you a lot of flexibility. It's kind of our version of thunder and lightning, and I like what both of them bring.
Yeah, I love their game. Well, with that being said, I'm going to wrap this thing up. This is a nice, heavy podcast today. We had a lot of good film study, a lot of good stuff today. As always, I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys so much. Write in, who do you want to see? What young players do you want to see in the game? Arkansas State, we're going to empty the bench. Who are you excited to see? It's kind of like a spring game. It's going to be 49-0 at halftime in all likelihood. I think we're just going to overwhelm them. But who do you want to see? Who are you excited for? Leave that in the comments. Appreciate you guys. As always, like the video. It's a huge help to us. It is a way to really help us. And subscribe to the channel. So as always, we appreciate you guys. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Scoop family. Go Bucks.